that was there. So you have somebody to recognize. So you can go there. Most times kids be so nervous. Networking is not a thing that's being spoke about.
Yeah.
You don't even know about networking until you get out. Sometimes you don't even know about it until after you got out of college. So it's like you go 24 years and you never know how to network. And don't even know what networking is. You have no clue. But most of the time, kids do it all the time. They just do it for stuff that they want. They don't know how to do it for stuff that they need.
Welcome, another episode of Above Average Black Men. Our first September episode. We're in a new month, man. We've been at this for a month. Yeah,
it's hard to believe we're in September already. Like
for a month.
And we started off with a flood, but I made it here.
But I'm excited because we got talk about Greg a little bit, man.
Right. So one of my friends from college, Mansfield University, we representing out here, doing something extraordinary up in Rochester. Has a program, CTC, Changing the Community, where they utilize football to teach and develop life skills. So he's going to be dialing in, joining us shortly. It ties in directly to kind of what we like to do and how I was brought up in terms of just giving back to the community, having a focus on kids and trying to help these guys have a better, brighter future. So I'm excited to bring him on and talk more about his background and what kind of led him there, where the program is now.
Well, you know what? It's ironic because Friday, man, I was last week was a tough week. Friday, I was just out of it, man. So I'm outside working Friday trying to get some stuff done, and I get a phone call. It was like, hey, you busy? I'm like, nah. And they said, you know what? I was just riding past Fisher Park. When we were at the league,
when we were in that
and I was just riding past Fisher Park, and I got goosebumps because I remember all the trouble we had trying to get it set up and running. When nobody else could do it, we were able to pull that off.
With no issue.
Yeah, and they were like, I just, he said sometimes, and this was probably the greatest compliment, how sometimes you make things look easy, except when you're close, you kind of get to see, what's going on behind the scenes. Right. And actually it was Nicole. And she was like, I just want to say thank you because that's why I do what I do. And I immediately started thinking about the three of us, you, Devin, and myself on the show, man. And Fisher Park was amazing when I think about it because it hasn't been done after us.
Right. I mean, it's rare that you can get, I would say, people from outside the community, because we weren't really part of that community, to work with people in the community, just to provide them with a service, even though it was just, basketball, but it was bringing people together. Like we had probably, I would say, neighbors come in and they were the coaches and they're helping out when we were doing skills and drills. We ended up having food, we had sponsors. Yeah. So that's another opportunity for people in the neighborhood to kind of come out and be a part of something. So it was a great thing that we did there, and it's great to hear that people still kind of talk about that moment.
Well, I still see people because I can't think of the guy, but he used to pop in Calgary every now and then, dark-skinned guy. And I can't think of his son play. And every time I see him, he talks about it. I was somewhere a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know the guy. He was like, yo, when y'all coming back to Fisher Park? I'm thinking to myself, like, that was like a one and done.
It's
really.
Like, even outside of that, just kind of with coaching and how I've been doing that for years, kind of started early, almost like immediately after college, just got into coaching. And then it's like when you see guys later on and they're grown and they make me feel old. Yeah. But they tell you that those moments matter, not even necessarily just the basketball part of it, but sometimes, how I carry myself or how I made them kind of carry themselves or act a certain way. And it goes beyond necessarily the sport of itself. It was more so just the mentorship and being there and show these guys, different way of living, some morals.
And it's ironic because it's how we got to this point to where we are now, above average black men, because we are. You're inspiring people, you're impacting people, to be above average. In a time where everybody thinks mediocrity is cool. And there's a guy named Nolan Fontaine. Shout out to Nolan Fontaine, who's living up in, you probably don't remember him. He's in Canada right now, but I met him in Chester. So I met him. So he talked a couple of times. So many years ago when I was working in Chester, man, I remember just mentoring him, working with him. And now, dude, he's graduated from Howard. I think he just got his second master's degree.
That's excellent.
Man, he's knocking out the box, man, and he's doing stuff too. I run into people who are actually doing stuff. It's just so ironic. Somebody sent me an email and said, look, hey, I know you do some work for me in Norristown. I got this school that I want you to talk to the principal. So I was like, oh, what's the name of the school? And they said, Roosevelt. That's what he's there. Yeah. So it's just how small you know, the world is. And I told you, somebody who works with me on a project that was in hype.
How does that make you feel though? Because I feel like I've had that sometimes where you have kids that come back and they're like, yo, I'm helping kids or I'm working with kids because of what you did. And that's almost kind of sometimes how I feel like I've gotten into this. But like, how does that make you feel? Especially you've done this for quite some time now.
I was laughing because a couple of weeks ago you were joking me about memorizing Bible studies. But remember you memorized the Bible verses? So lo and behold, I'm coming out to a barbershop and I ran into a dude from the league. And he's like, yo man, because of you, I'm a pastor now.
Wow.
I'm pastoring the church, and I started laughing because I was thinking about you and the Bible verse.
We had to remember a verse. For those who weren't here, we'll go give some story. Like, just so y'all don't think he just making me remember Bible verses just out of nowhere. Like, it was a basketball league, and that was one of the requirements was in order to play. It was like a verse a week, so you had to. That's nothing. You know, I can remember a sentence or two before you go.
But it's funny that he's Michael Boyd. He's a pastor, so he and I are supposed to connect tomorrow. He's actually, and that's the second person. I was in Chick-fil-A over the summer. And the guy came up to me and says, hey, didn't you used to, the basketball league in New Covenant? He's a pastor. And I'm going to tell you another funny story. I'm outside doing yard work in the summertime, the living truck across the street. So a guy stops in front of me. I said, you got the wrong house. He said, nah, I know you. So, he says, yeah, the basketball league. He goes, and the four most important things.
That's,
yeah. And then Nicole.
Still remembers that.
But Nicole calls me up the other day and says she was talking to Pumpkin. They couldn't remember the fourth thing. So, because Pumpkin wants to teach her children. So it's just amazing how, to your point, you feel a little old, but it just reminds me of the importance of purpose, man, because there's so many people who go through life and don't impact anybody.
Right.
Who just, who just don't. They just kind of, it's like Groundhog's Day. They get up in the morning, they do what they got to do, they go home, go sleep, repeat the cycle. And for me, on those days when things are not going well, it's good to know, man, that there's people out there.
So what was like one of your first, I would say, memorable experiences for you where it was just like giving back? This is like, I can enjoy this. Like, this is something that I feel like I can do for the rest of my life, where like, this is just like, this is a part of my life. Like, you know? Well,
it's funny because I got hooked the same when you got hooked. I was playing baseball for Charles Mays, Tommy Franklin, a very good friend, Tommy, his brother. I had played for them, and his brother was like, hey, I need a coach for my, my 12-14 team. And I was like, I think I was like 20. I was like, come on, man, I don't know about coaching, baseball. And these are the same kids from my neighborhood, too. That's what made it worse, because they were the same kids I saw in the neighborhood. I shouldn't say worse. He was like, yo, I need a coach. You can do it. And I was like, I don't know if I can do it, man, because I'd never done anything like it before. I've always played.
And that's interesting. That's definitely like a psychological part of it too. It's like, I used to play. Like, I'm not the coach. Like, I know my experiences with coaches. Like, so, not to say it was bad, but
So I coached him, man. I coached this 12-14-year-old team who should have won the city championship, didn't win the city championship because I let a kid talk me into playing him, and I shouldn't have played him, and he cost me the game, But I never forget the feeling, even though we lost afterwards. Like, yo, this is pretty cool, because you're working with kids and you're teaching kids. Me, I've been on you about fundamentals, so you get a chance to teach them the right stuff. At the same time, you get to give them these positive messages. You get to say, and then the thing for me was even better because I saw them in the community.
Right.
So it wasn't like I was saying one thing and they couldn't see me doing the same thing. And I just got hooked, man. And then when I was in college, it was the same thing. I was in college. After I did that, I went back to school, and my sophomore year. And like your Mansfield, we had a new coach, and he made us do it.
Like, so you had to do that at the school or in the community?
No, in the community. He was like, hey, y'all can go read some kids.
You had to do stuff like that.
Yeah, and then he was like, he says, y'all, and then he said, while y'all in there, y'all going to be a part of some gym classes. And we had to do it. So we were there, man, and I just remember for some reason, kids liked me. For some reason, kids just always drawn to me.
I mean, that was fun for us too. Yeah. I went to a small school, and we was like superstars. So I was signing autographs. Like, that was great for me because of those reasons. But I did also like the kids too. Like, that was awesome.
Well, it was interesting, but it was a novelty because I was probably the first black guy a lot of them had saw. So that was a little different. So they were like, apprehensive at first, man. It was like trying to figure it out. But it was just the feeling, though, that, when kids start giving you high five, man, or like by the time you get to the third or fourth time, they just so excited just to see you. It's not even about what's going on.
And that was actually probably something I was going to bring up. Is like, sometimes it's more so how they are when they come back.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily that moment, because sometimes like that could be trying. Yeah. You don't even see it sometimes that you might have influenced or had an impact on that kid until the next time you see him.
There was a kid at Canton that was a pain in the neck, and I can't think of his name. but I'm riding down Washington Lane by the school administrative building, and somebody pulls up, like, beeping his horn his motorcycle. I'm like, what? You know, he just beep, 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 beep. So I'm like, come on, man, I'm almost home, really? And then he pulls up and pulls his visor up, and I recognize the face. I didn't recognize the name. He said, hey, how you doing? Remember me? And it's just crazy, though, how you see these people years later, and now they're adults. You know, the song I use sometimes, you know, Ricardo from the Mission.
That was from a long time ago.
Yeah, so I mean, just to still be connected with people, and they just remember the stuff you did for them. It's pretty. I think you can't replace that. I think it's nothing. You know, it's not about money. It's not about your time. It's just, wow, you impacted somebody enough that 10, 15 years later, like Punk can remember the 4 most important things. That's pretty cool. That, you know, all of these years later, you know, that she still remembers that.
Yeah, that is interesting. But I feel like, you know, on the opposite side of this, it's not always just peachy keen when you're giving back and helping kids. So, or not to just say helping kids, but there's two sides of this when you give it back. You know, like there's families or just outside influences that you got to deal with. So, I mean, what are some things that you may have encountered, or like how do you handle those situations?
My most embarrassing moment. I'm coming out of downtown, me and a couple of friends. I'm coming from a meeting. We all suited down, and the prison bus is rolling by. And somebody's calling my name, and everybody's looking at me. You know, because they're like, "Yo, who you know in the prison bus?" like, yeah, like, yo,
you're supposed to be on that bus.
They look at me like, "Yo, who you know in the prison bus?" You know, and this was kind of like a big deal because I was just trying to get, you know, my business stuff going. You know, and they looking at me, man, like, yo, you know. But I said, you know, but that's why I give back. You know, I kind of spun it real quick. But to this day, I don't know who it was. But it was the prison bus, you know, going by and they hollering through it, yo, Mr. Chris. So it was obviously somebody, yeah, yo, and I was like, first of all, I'm like, they let you scream out the bus?
Right.
I'm thinking myself.
I mean, there's a lot of Chris's out here. Maybe it's some other Chris, but if you said your last name.
But everybody looked at, it was like 5 of us, and they all looked at, you know, like nobody asked, but you can tell look on their face, like, yo, who you know and why you know somebody in the prison bus there? And then when I used to do work at SCI, State Correctional Student Chester, it was the same thing. I ran into a relative, you know, that was younger than me. I ran into him, and then also ran into a kid that I used to mentor, and he was in there, man, and he could remember everything I told him, but he said he didn't listen to any of it. Wish he had him. And he would when I went in there, he would talk to me, man, or if he thought somebody was looking at me hard, yo, stop looking, you know. He was a cool kid, but so there's two sides to it. Yeah, there's two sides to it, man. When some just don't make it.
And that, like, to me, you know, kind of it breaks my heart sometimes, because, you know, I have some situations like that too, where kids, you know, they might have talent, you know, you think that they can be really good. Couple character issues, even guys who don't have character issues who just make bad decisions, man. So definitely interesting to hear kind of how you deal with that and kind of take the approach when you have those type situations.
For me, the hardest thing is when you're talking to a kid. And when you work with, like, I work with preschool to prison, so I kind of see both ends. When you're sitting and talking to a young kid and you know where they're going to end up at if they don't change, that's the hardest thing. Because you're trying to tell them, you're trying to point out to them that if you don't change the way you behave, the way you think, your concept, that this is where you end up at, and they don't believe you.
It's like
they just don't believe you.
And again, I'm trying to think about that too. Like, even from my perspective, when I was young, man, it's like hard to just be like, all right, you know, this guy knows what he's talking about. You do feel like this little bit of, like, you know, I'm different.
I agree.
Time's different. You know, time must have been different for you, but like now I'm on something different. So that always, I feel like, kind of happens, and I can kind of say I fell victim to that sometimes with myself as a child. You know, just thinking like you almost got to find it on your own.
But some things, like for instance, I say this all the time. You don't have to stick your hand in the fire to know it burns because somebody got burned a long time ago. So there's certain things that you got to be a little wiser about. There's not a kid who grew up in the inner city or not growing up in the city who doesn't have bad examples around them. So it's not like they don't have somebody to look at and say, yo, I'm acting like them, I can end up like them. And because I had a kid who told me once, I was in a charter school in Camden, and kid, for some reason he just got up and turned her desk over. Some, you know, lady was doing a lesson, so I was like, yo, what's up, dude? He was like, you know, oh, hey, man, okay, let's go outside and have a conversation. He's, man, you a sellout. Well, why I'm a sellout? You know,
because you got a job?
No, because the way I was dressed, and I didn't have. It was funny because I had on a pair of jeans, a pair of sneakers, and I had on a t-shirt. I was in, you know, after school program.
You had creases in your jeans.
Yeah,
what it was.
Got all that. But his idea, I was a sellout because I wasn't talking slang, I wasn't cursing, I wasn't doing the crazy stuff. I didn't have a target, so he viewed me as a sellout. So I was like, wait a minute, what makes me a sellout? Because I can pay my bills on time, because I was able to move out the hood. But it's just funny how their norms become reality. And some fight so hard to maintain those norms, even when you point out around them, like look around you and see people making the choices you make. So that's what makes when I see people like you, Nicole, Devin, Greg, the guy I talked to, Justin who was in here, Mike, that's what makes it that much more special, because I think, and I know people my age are going to get on me, I think a lot of people my age, we kind of dropped the ball because we kind of fell into that Michael Jordan thing. It's kind of about me. So there was no hope. There's still some I know who give back, but there's a bunch of people who left the hood and never look back, who don't give back.
So do you feel like, or do you see that there's probably more of an effort to give back now from like my generation, or is it about the same?
No, I think it's. I go back to Ted Josie. I don't know if you listen. You met Ted. Ted is like my mentor. Everything. But I remember him taking the time. We got a caller here. Hey, welcome, Greg. Above Average Black Man. How you doing, man?
Fantastic, yourself.
I'm doing well. This is Chris's dad, the other Chris. I think you probably
what's
figure out
going
who am I
on,
talking to.
Man, you thought, okay, now I know. Chris, they get your voice. You damn sure got radio, buddy.
So what's going on, dude? I heard great things about you, man.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. You know what? That was a great thing.
Yeah.
I was trying to down for it, but nah, you're right.
Not on this show, man.
Yeah,
We
bro.
celebrate people like
man.
you.
I was
on
about to
this
say,
show.
the reason I asked you on tonight, man, is definitely to show you some love and just kind of shine a spotlight on you and what you do up there in Rochester. I know you have CTC. We kind of were talking a little bit about that before you joined, but definitely kind of more so before we get into your program, man, tell people a little bit about yourself, man. Where you from? Like maybe where you went to school at,
Hold up, Greg. I gotta ask you a question first, man. The last time I was in Rochester, I went to RIT, Rochester Institute of Technology. So, yeah. So the last time I was in Rochester, man, they had on silken wools and jerry curls, man. I was like, what? This is way before your time, man. I couldn't find a black barbershop. So I was laughing, man. But I hear South Henrietta's on the up and up now, man. They did a lot of work there.
What's an up and up?
Yeah, South Henrietta. Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, my funny story is.
They get to the work here. I've been in inner city.
Well, my funny story before we started.
Downtown.
Yeah, the funny story before I started is people want to know why they didn't call it South Henrietta, Institute of Technology instead of Rochester. Because the initials would have been SHIT if you'd have called it South Henrietta. So so everybody joked us. Because I played basketball. Every school we went to joked us about that.
Hopefully y'all was good, man. You couldn't have been bad, too.
Well, anyway, welcome to the show, man. Welcome to Above Average Black Men, sir. Chris, all yours, man.
But yeah, Greg, like I was saying, man, definitely wanted to kind of get more into your background, bro. Like, just tell people where you from, kind of get your background, maybe what college you went to, and then we can get into. Yeah, I'm always on that college stuff. I'm representing Mansfield here, but then like also we could get into like why you wanted to start CTC.
Why do I want to discuss it?
Yeah. Like why did you want to start CTC?
Oh, so pretty much it's funny. I actually, the kid who is growing it now, but the kid who I actually, was the reason why I really started it. I told him today why I started it today. It's the first time he ever heard about it. And this was about 12 years ago. 13 years ago, really. I was in school, in college, and, a bunch of dudes at school just wasn't good. I'm like, how the hell you got a scholarship? Like, I'm like, I know people back home that don't even get scholarships, and they way back than you.
Mm-hmm.
So, I went home, watched the game, and I seen this young kid named Eddie Jackson. He was just like unbelievable.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like the first kid I got kids like this. I knew he was young. And I was in kind of like JUCO and all that stuff, but watching he was in high school yet, but watching him go into high school, he was just like unstoppable at receiver. So I'm like, man, there's no ego. So he had the all-time, our section leader, he's the all-time section leader in yards for his career. And I'm like, yo, you got a scholarship? He ain't got no, he ain't go to college, nothing. He's just home.
That's That's crazy.
I
He's the man.
think, yo, that can't happen to us. Think about that. It's like a dude being an all-time leader, point scorer, and still here.
Yeah, and then not getting no looks anywhere.
Exactly. I'm like, that can't happen. So, that's when I was like, you know what? I can get people to school. I remember just helping people get to school. Even when I was at Memphis, I got my homeboy a scholarship before he go to the program. I can get people to school. We did after the camp. This CTC camp. That's pretty much why I really started doing what I was doing. It kind of evolved to what it is today.
That's
awesome. It's not because of that. It's not because of that reason right there.
So just one kid, and then it just kind of evolved and took over from there. So, I mean, how many kids are you working with or servicing now? Are they all from Rochester? Are they throughout the area?
They all Monroe County area. So we got kids all through the whole. We have kids from the whole county. So we got kids that drive literally an hour away to come to the program.
Oh, that's good. So what are some of the key components of your program, Greg?
A lot of the key components really just comes from what sports is. Discipline, accountability, assertiveness, and the main thing is just stick to it, stick-to-itiveness, togetherness, just camaraderie, teamwork, and teamwork. So we just use those attributes that I've learned over the years in college and just playing sports, period. And even every corporation if you want to run a corporation that way. And so that's pretty much, if you can have a coachable kid, you have a hireable employee. If you can't have a coachable kid, it's absolutely be hireable because it's the same atmosphere in some ways.
And you know what? And that's always my pet peeve. I was probably the 10th best athlete to come in my neighborhood. It's debatable. Some people say I was higher, but some people say I was higher. But a lot of those dudes, just like you said, they just they were all that in high school and in summer leagues, and they just went nowhere.
Yeah.
They just went home.
And don't get opportunities or have somebody like you willing to step up and be like, you know what, I'll work with you, or I'll make sure that you got some footage, or we can get you somewhere. With kind of, I guess, the football side of it, I know y'all have different programs where you kind of talk to kids outside of football. So could you probably just provide us with maybe, I guess, some of the topics of discussion when you're talking to these kids, or what types of people do you generally have come in and talk to these kids about outside of just, X's and O's and football, man?
So we have a model called the Community Reconnection Model. And so the individuals we have come into our program to talk to the youth is, people who do resume development, interview skills, organizations that do health and wellness, other mentors, tutors, different professors, policemen, anybody in the community that is going to do something that can generally directly impact our youth. We like to have those people from those organizations come in to talk to the kid. Because what typically happens is, a lot of times the kid may have a need, but he don't know where the need is at, or he don't know how to find it to help fix the problem. So by us bringing in certain individuals, what happens is when you have a need, you're like, oh shoot, I know something out there. So you have somebody to recognize. So you can go there. Most times kids be so nervous because networking is not a thing that's being spoke about.
Yeah.
They don't even know about networking until you get out. Sometimes you don't even know about it until after you got out of college. So it's like you go 24 years and you never know how to network. And don't even know what networking is. You have no clue what most of the time kids do it all the time. They just do it for stuff that they want. They don't know how to do it for stuff that they need.
Well, I think.
So we just got to.
No, go ahead.
And so the community reconnection model is just that we connect the kids to leaders and individuals in the community that can help with the needs of what most youth go through or need for their transition from high school to employment or just life period.
Well, I think, and I would never say just, because that's, man, let me tell you, you know how valuable that is.
Yeah, all of
because,
that, man.
You know, it's funny because my father was big on that, and I made sure my kids had about networking, about meeting people, man, about treating people a certain way, because you never know when you're gonna run into them again. But you know, it's funny because you know, and I grew up in the hood, and they had different names for it. You know, they ain't gonna network, and you know, you were brown nosing, you were smoozing, you know, all this crazy stuff. Yeah, or even when you try to do something with somebody, you know, we called it nepotism, which is probably the biggest word most of them use. But then when other people use it, they call it networking. You know, they call it connecting. So I think I admire what you're doing, because I think that's a transferable skill that, especially we as brown people, don't have. You know, we don't.
Oh, not at all. Not at all. And the thing about it is, what happens to us is once one do, then our each one teach one model is so far gone. But what I've learned and what I've seen is it's the system in itself. So our institutions, think about it, DP. What you've been doing and the stuff that you've been looking to do with dealing with youth and the program and stuff like that, you would think that your school, once they know what you're doing, will bring you in with open arms to get you to be able to, because you've been there, done that.
Right.
So you're mostly relatable to the youth that was trying to do what it is that you're doing. It should be nowhere you should get going to that. It should be begging to come to the school to talk to the kids.
You would think so, but you know.
Well, let me tell you this. I graduated in 1979. I'm showing my age. I just got a call last week about when can I come to the high school.
Which is wild, like, cause my dad, his background is kind of in with working with families and has plenty of experience doing that. So to hear that it's taking that long for them to come back to you is it's like ridiculous. But for you, Hop, man, I know I've been talking to you throughout this entire journey, and I mean, I know you encountered some kind of hiccups and not necessarily having, you know, that full community support starting out. So could you kind of share maybe some of those tribulations that you had and like how you was able to kind of fight through that to become the program that you are right now that can be duplicated, man?
Shoot. Oof. So it still happens to this day. I'm gonna tell you a brief story. So the city, when I first came to the city, I told the city, hey, we need to do this with athletes. Like, we had a bad, we was like the second worst city for young black boys in the country. Our graduation rate for young black boys was like under 10%.
Wow.
Our graduation rate period was like 42%, so between 39 and 42%. Period for all our like undergraduation rate. The boys under 10. So I'm like, listen, if you put money in sports, kids will, I'm like, school camaraderie comes from the sports program. Even the regular students have school spirit when the sports programs go real well.
Right, they don't even be on the team.
The community backs the team, the community backs the school when the team is doing well and they go far.
Yeah.
I said, listen, why don't y'all put time and energy into the sports so they can be backed by the fanatics, the people in the community who would then look to back these student athletes and bring more notoriety to what they got going on.
Right.
And going on, not in court, it's not a third, it's not needed. We need to focus on longer school days and getting tutor and this kind of stuff. That was the focus. I'm like, okay.
Longer school days.
Yeah, which is dumb.
Right.
First of all, because higher education, we talk about higher education ain't that long.
Nah.
You in one class for less than an hour.
Yep, you got breaks.
So that's higher education. Why do you got these kids going to be in school for all this time if higher education is the opposite of that?
Right.
Well, I can answer.
I digress.
I can answer that question for you. And I know I offend somebody all the time because you're dealing with sports in this country is viewed as a crutch for African Americans. I watched the documentary of the Brawl in the Palace. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah, I saw that.
And I was around when it happened,
It's a good one.
but when I saw the documentary and I got to see the behind the scenes stuff and the stuff that people were saying, you know, not even about the brawl now, it was about bringing the black athlete in control. You know, they out of control. You know,
Just the narrative that's
they
put
think
out
they
there.
can do whatever they want to do. And Jermaine O'Neal summed it up best. Says, yo, you watch hockey, they knock the snot at each other every day. Nobody says a word. So I think the reason why we get that push is because they think, is they don't see it as a vehicle for us to get out. They see it as a way to keep us down by limiting the resources they put into it, unless we can make them money.
Correct, and I'm glad you mentioned that because there's I can draw real well. That's a vehicle for me to be a painter and all that. But the thing is, we don't have any black painters, so nobody sees that as a vehicle to get out. You can draw real well. Because the seeing is believing. That means somebody being there, you go, oh, I can see that. It's possible.
It's facts.
And so we're given it. The system does help us create the pipeline. That's all we can see. But my thing is this: if there is a vehicle for that, let's use it. Because what happens is everybody gonna make this league.
Yeah.
But what happens is you go to college or you go to higher education and play that sport that you're playing. Do the higher education, and you get it for free at least. Guess what? I thought I was gonna graduate until I was freaking my junior year. I'm like, I'm almost able to go to the league. My junior year, I realized, oh shoot, I won't be able to graduate. But I would have taken graduation the whole time. So I would have never graduated if it wasn't for playing football. So all I did was just took my life and say, you know what? Both my parents passed when I was young. So if I had no parents from middle school through high school and I made it out, I'm like, I know that people can make it out. Like just like me. Just gotta have a better path. I know everybody don't have the same type of tenacity that I got, but I'm like, if I can make the path a little easier, then they should be able to make it happen. Long story short, the school, I mean not the school, but the city of Rochester decided this year to put $2 million into an indoor facility. I've been working 12 years. Now they put $2 million into a city facility.
That's love, bro.
To do training for student athletes.
That's love.
$2 million. I could have did it for exactly. Mind you, I already got my own. It cost me way less than $2,000, but $2 million. But they got the money. They gonna do it their way. And they come to ask me, say, hey, we want you to come help running. Crazy? You want me to compete against me?
Pretty much. That's.
But you know what? And I want to back up a little bit because you said something that was key because we had Mike Jones, ran the comedian, and he said the same thing. He lost his mom.
Yeah.
At an early age, and I think so many people that happen to, they park right there. So I think it's amazing that you were able to keep moving. One of my favorite slogans is keep pushing the stone because so many people get stuck right there.
And it's great to hear how you kind of again was able to bounce back, push forward, bro, and keep moving forward. But wanted to kind of get an idea or sense to what other people that you have helping you run this program, man. I know it's not just you all alone by yourself. Like I do see other guys coming in and stepping in and helping out with drills and coaching and doing some mentoring. You've been doing this long enough now, man. I see that you have guys that kind of almost graduate and come back. So can you kind of share a little bit about that?
Yeah, man. That's been the beauty of it, really. Like, start off with me and 10 friends, and I was like, yo, listen, we all, used to work out. Our common goal was to train, work out together, and try to get to the league. I'm like, well, guess what? We know how we fell short. I had a couple boys that, had tryouts, but they had a tryout, but it wasn't really a good tryout. They had a bad agent. It was all our stories together. That's nothing. We don't all tell our story. I'm included. We don't all tell our story, and because we don't all tell our story, somebody else will be able to hear that story, like, oh, that's how we messed up, and they can go forward.
Yeah.
That's why I feel like telling your story is very important, and that's where his story comes from. So, or his or her story comes from. So instead of we having history from somewhere far, we have history from our community, and I was using my boy's story in situations like, oh, it happened to you, that happened to you, that happened to you. Okay, so guess what? Now I'm able to minimize some of my kids' mistakes. And that's why we were able to have the amount of kids we had to have a shot to the NFL, the most ever in the history of Rochester.
Wow.
And so we had 5 kids from our program alone who had a shot in the NFL, got signed in the same year to an NFL deal. Granted, they didn't make it, they didn't stay, but just to have signing bonus.
Yeah, how many people can say they did that, man? Like, that's extraordinary in itself.
But I think what stands out to me, and I think, but in order to do what you're doing, and you said 10 friends, you gotta be selfless and not selfish, because I know people who they don't make it, they're not telling anybody anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? And especially that's what we do a lot of times. They got to learn their own. I even hear parents say it about their kids. So I think that's commendable that you willing to be first at that level of transparency.
Yeah.
You know,
and take that experiences, all y'all experiences, and kind of be able to form that into something positive that you can share with kids. Because like most people, you know, when they fail at something, like nobody want to be like, man, I didn't make it, and like, you know, they kind of hold that and take it to the chest. But like again, you was able to take this and make something great.
So when is the book coming out?
Yo, I'm definitely going to yeah, I actually am going to do wrong. I think it's time now because yesterday was the first time one of our kids made the active 3-man roster for my program.
Oh, cool.
Man, congratulations.
Man.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah, our first year, one of our kids. I had and the great part about it was this is a kid who made me change the program dynamic. Because before, I only used to do high school kids.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in 7th grade, so I wanted to do high school kids, but older brothers used to be in the program. So with him and another kid, older brothers in the program, so he used to sit and watch stuff while we trained the kids. They used to be mad as hell after their mom. Why can I play? Why can I participate? Crying, why can I participate? So then, you know, the mom kept getting on me. Well, why my baby can't play like it? It's gonna say yada yada yada. I said, you know what? Because it's for older kids and they might not be ready. So I said, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I'm not bringing it backwards. I'm not doing something.
I mean, it's something physical. You don't want to necessarily get hurt being with some bigger, older kids, man. But
but I was telling them, I said, this training, so I said, it's not for play. This is not. I said, this ain't babysitting.
Right.
So I said, you know what? I'm gonna give them a shot. They said they're crying, whining, telling all the moms about it, and the moms getting on me. So you know what? I'm gonna make this problem. I'm gonna let y'all come up. Let y'all play. Let y'all participate. And I made the training so damn hard, so I made it quit. But they didn't quit. They was trying to prove me wrong so bad that I know for a fact they wanted to quit, but they just didn't do it.
Wow.
So I was like, hey, you know what? They earned it. And that was a kid who actually was the first one to ever make the 53 man roster for my program.
Wow.
He changed that into our program. Yep. I was like, damn.
But that's a book. I mean,
but it makes sense though. It makes sense.
Yeah, but it's a book in two ways. This is a book one. I'm not telling you what to do, but that's a book.
You want the credit? He trying to set it up right
now.
No,
what I'm saying, because you know what, I think young athletes or aspiring athletes need to read about their journey.
Yeah. Because
AAU and all these other programs sell these kids a bill of dreams, man. You know, they not really telling them about you got to put the work in. There's Zaire Franklin is a guy I know. He plays for Indianapolis Colts. So when he comes to Philly, you know, one of the schools I'm in, he graduated from, so we talked. And he talked about putting that work in, man. That people don't, you know, wasn't he was the most talented, but nobody was going to outwork him. He put the work in. He did what you just said, man. When everybody else was quitting, he kept rolling. Yeah. And our kids don't hear that. Yeah. They just see the end of it. I'm in the NFL, I'm going to be the NBA.
I feel like another important part to that story is that you're honest and upfront, you know what I mean? Letting them know what their level is. And like, yo, this is what it's going to take to get to this level. I was saying that. You said I was being cruel. I'm older now. But like, this is what it takes to get to this level, you know? And, you know, just pushing them to that point where it wasn't, I don't feel as though it was torture. You just was like, you know, this is what it's going to take. And if you really want to be about this, you know, you got to be able to put that in. So it's like, great to hear. You don't coddle these kids, which is another thing that I feel like is major today, you know, where you got parents, coaches, everybody want to get a participation award. Like everybody thinks their child should be playing and doing this. So, I mean, we did just kind of hear with how you deal with that, you know. I mean, is that something that you feel as though is still consistent or prevalent in your program where sometimes, you know, you got that parent or that kid that just thinks like, yo, I should be doing this.
Yeah.
Oh, you had that, but see now, I have less and less parents that come and bother me because the proof is gonna put it out.
Right, the results.
Where I'm telling you what I know I can do. I've seen it with my boys and how we didn't make it, but now I know like, okay, if we do this, and this is how you can make it. Now it's like, listen, man, I've seen it. I know what it takes. I already know what it looks like. What's Charlie? Like, you know,
Well, let me ask you a question. How do you deal with those parents? How do you have conversations with those parents around? Because, you know, when I was coaching basketball, you know, Chris told me I was harsh, but I had every parent thought their kid was going to UCLA,
And not necessarily harsh to me. It's like the other kids. They can't take it, man.
Your kid is 4'2". You know what I mean? You know, and he's lazy. So how do you have that conversation? And my example is this: when I was going around with Chris and Nicole, and Chris, first time I think he's ever heard the story, I had coaches tell me that I was the first person that asked about the academic side of things. You know, like, yo, is my kid gonna graduate? You know, I don't want to hear all this, you know, shooting from there, shooting from there, shooting from there. He gonna get a degree out of this place.
Correct. So that conversation was easy for me at this stage in the game, because now it's not like it's unheard of to where I tell parents honestly, I'm like, listen, I say, you know, it's called student athlete for a reason. I said, granted, NCAA don't really care about me being a student.
Yeah.
But, you know, but that is just part of the requirement that they're using as a barrier or a right of entry. So just get the entry price. I mean, you can't get a job on the application, so fill out the application.
Right.
So I tell them, listen, your application is these grades. Do the application, get the clearinghouse stuff done, and then so you know, you can take your talent to the next level if you have an opportunity to do so. But, you know, it's sort of the harsh reality of, you know, certain kids like, I'm like, listen, hey man, let your speed up. The kid don't want to get his speed up. Alright, you don't need your speed up. You don't want to run track. That's what's going to help you. You want football, basketball, 5'11". You taller than football player, but basketball, man, you gonna cut it.
Right.
I just tell them that. And I'll let them know, hey, listen, I can go and play basketball. 5'11". Tell me how many 5'11 dudes that's on major D1 basketball, and then tell me how many 5'11 dudes in the league, then you tell me. Then you go to 5'11 in football and tell me how many 5'11 dudes in football.
And you can find some of them, you know?
You find a way more in football than 5'11 dudes
Right,
in basketball.
yeah, for sure. Like
way more.
them D-backs, like they never really be really that
5'11
big.
D-back, you're considered tall.
Yeah.
So how do you take a kid through the process? You know, parents show the kid, man, and I know especially now that you got a guy on a 53-man roster, I can imagine how parents, I want my son in the league. You know, that's their retirement fund.
And is that the mindset that everybody comes in on? It's like, yo, I'm here because I want to be in the league, or is it like, you know, you kind of giving that balance?
Listen, I actually want parents to have the ideology and the mindset of bringing their kids to me because you want your kid to be in the league. Why? Because that means you ready to shoot for the stars. You want to shoot for the stars. Because like I said, once I got you shooting for the stars, I'm going to be able to instill all the other characteristics within you. Okay, you don't make it to the league, guess what? You got a college degree.
Right.
You got scholarships, you at paper school. Now you on to the next bigger, better things in your life, and now you don't have to worry about having debt behind you.
Right. With something that's interesting that you just said, bro, is like having their parents be in line and thinking that same thing, like, yo, he got to make it. Because now it's like they all got that mindset of, you know, we got to do whatever it takes. Me as a parent, you as a child. Like,
Correct. Because you'll get parents who drop a kid off, and then you know, you don't see the parent at all.
Man, I trust. I've been coaching, bro. I know that. I've seen kids where I never met their parent until like a game or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what's so funny? Those kids actually, if they're consistent, like if they stay consistent, like I actually like, I like whatever kid comes in, won't be consistent and ain't gonna put in that work. But the ones who have that, man, they come because they want to come. Ain't no parent making them, ain't no coach making them, no dad making them. They come because they know this is where they want to be.
Right.
Those are the special ones, man. Those are the ones that kind of, they don't have to be there. They can be somewhere else, and nobody would care. But they choose to be with somebody who's going to push them and make it tough on them so they can be great. Those kids come out special. And
you know what? I found out they work harder because because their parents are not there. They want your approval. Yeah, coaching kids like that, man. You know, everybody's dad and mom be in the stands, and you know, kids are playing to their dad and moms. And that dude whose parents wasn't there, that's dude coach. You want me to run through a brick wall? Whatever you want me to do, I'll do.
You know what's funny? I used to do that when I was young. So when I was in school, when I was at Little League, Pop One or whatever you want to call it. So you know, I ended up one of our city teams voted. So I ended up going out to have niggas, we play for Western now. I'm like, I don't even know where Western. He said, man, coach threw our team folded, and he came and started picking up some of the kids, so he was out there with them. I said, for real? He said, yeah, man, just go to McDonald's on West Main.
Go to McDonald's.
Be there with the truck.
It don't sound safe.
I told my girl, I said, yo, because I'm going to practice. I gotta go to West Main though. He said, alright, you got to be practice, you gotta go. So I walked in. I didn't know how far that was from where my house was.
You was committed.
I had to do a 30-minute walk. I had to do a 30-minute walk every time I practice. And every time I was scared to tell the coach that was a 30-minute walk for me. And I had to walk 30 minutes every day after practice. It was damn at nighttime. So, you know, once the coach realized I was good and the coach had to tell everyone, he said, oh, hold up. You walk this far to practice every day? After that, it changed the perspective.
Yeah.
You have to try to get me to go out to a school out there. If I was actually one of the best players on the team, you have to get me to go out to a school out there. My high school, my grandma shut that thing down. She ain't know no better. She didn't understand. She didn't know no better. So I was on the phone with the coach. And after the season, he was like, man, yo, the high school coach seen you play. He said, yo, they want you to go to the high school. They want you to go over to suburban and come to the high school. He said, do you want to do that? I said, yeah, man, I do it, man. I'm like, wow, I do it. And then next thing my grandma was listening on the other phone. He ain't doing that.
You just on the other line.
She had no clue what opportunity she just messed up from me.
Yeah.
Oh man.
None whatsoever. It's like me going to the school. Matter of fact, I could be up talking about this all the time. What's the school that the twins, the Morris twins, were playing at?
They went to Newman.
Yeah.
In Philly.
Yeah, Newman.
So it would be like me going to that school with them. How many people would you want that school?
Man, that's terrible to hear, man. Like, but
just bring back memories.
kind of bringing it back. I was about to say, man, because I was like, man, I could have transferred too, man. I could have been out, dog. You could have been out here, man. We'd been on TV somewhere.
You giving Chris flashbacks because what happened was we were playing in the summer league, and Chris played against him, man. And I'll say he destroyed him.
No, this is like young, though.
They were young, though. Yeah, but they were still being recruited then. They were still being recruited then, man.
But like outside of that. Just because it was like names, but I wanted to talk to you about kind of the program again, man, and how, or like how do you deal with the parents if you have anything that you offer to parents? Because kind of related to your story here with, your grandmother, it helps to have somebody in your corner that just knows kind of the game.
Dealing with the parent aspect of it, I've kind of learned to, I just listen to their concerns, and then what I do is I say, okay, because most of the time their concerns be it be stuff that has nothing to do with what's at hand. So like for instance, I had a kid who had an opportunity to go to college. A coach wanted to see him go to school, and he wanted to see him come to a camp. But because, he forgot to wash the dishes or take out the garbage one day, or, just up to his room, she wanted him to miss that whole opportunity. Right back, text, email, all that from the coach saying, we want you to see him, we're going to offer him, just come here and do everything you say you're going to do. The mom literally was using the fact that he didn't clean his room or just try to use a chore as a situation to say he's not worthy of the opportunity. I'm like, that's not.
So the rest of his life over some chores? Like,
listen, you get it all the time because all the parent want to do is try to use something as a leverage for themselves to say, hey, I'm still your parent, so you need to listen to me. But that's not time for that.
No.
That point, it's not a time for that. So I have those moments where I got to literally mentor the parent as well as the kid.
But I tell you the same thing I tell Chris and my kids. You know what? Everybody don't see what you see. And then there's some parents who get in their own way because they don't see past, the now. They think that because this is my life, that's going to be my kid's life.
Correct.
Yeah.
And every opportunity for them ain't really, every opportunity that you see ain't opportunity they see for the kids.
Yeah.
So it's you painting the picture and trying to, I wish there was a magic wand, Chris, I can tell you how I get the parents to see, but for the most part, the ones that do see coming in, those are the easy parents, because they already know, like, man, shit, man, I can't say well, not every last one, but I would say we got a 75% winning percentage with our kids leaving Rogers to going to Cali and getting D1 offers out of Cali.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
And they never had an offer. They never had an offer here. Next thing you know, you get the local regional schools saying, oh my God, how we missed out on this kid? Yeah, I've been showing you this kid 2 years ago. You didn't want to believe me. Listen, now you got them to Cali, next you know, in 5 months you get an offer. It only be a year because he gets a big deal with D1 offer. And it's because the stage is set for him. The stage is already set over there, and all you got to do is eat. And so our kids be good, but just got in this region. That's why I gotta give them the exposure and get them out because they don't take this region serious. So, but yeah, I had said that talked to me 2 hours and literally trying to convince her to let her son go over there. He wanted to go, other kids over there, and now the kid that was just sent over there, 2 out of the 4 already got divisional offers. Already didn't play the first game yet. They ain't been there a year.
Wow.
So, he would have been more, and actually he was the more talented one because he was a young sophomore DB. And to find deep in the back corners, backside corners, naturally at corner, it's hard to find, especially because it's a high need because the game has changed.
Yeah.
You gotta have more than one. You gotta have more than 2, 3 DBs now on the field that can play the game that you need.
Yeah.
So everybody's looking for those skill positions at that position, and they're going to be overpaid for that position because you gotta have it because the spread is there. The game changed.
Yeah, it really has, man. But
So, do you recruit kids at all, or do they all come to you?
Oh, I recruit. Oh man, I'm helping.
I recruit.
Oh yeah, I travel with the kids. So when I be doing these tournaments, I'll be there and I be coaching. I don't like losing. So I be taking time out my day with other stuff I got going on to take the kids on the road and coach them to, gain exposure. And I'll be like, so man, please. The moment I see somebody that can play, best believe I'll be recruiting them. The opportunity to do that. Oh yeah.
Poaching kids.
I'm about to break them. You got a scholarship card in a minute.
You got a scholarship card.
I need the best.
Oh man.
So I gotta ask you a question.
You the funniest, bro.
What do you say to those parents who get their kids left down on purpose to change their ranking?
Say it again?
Parents who get their kids, a lot of kids be left back to repeat a grade.
They reclassify.
They reclassify because they think they can improve their ranking.
Well, listen, I'm gonna be honest. I've been doing some analysis on every classification. For some kids, it's actually worth it.
Really? Would you say across all sports, or are you looking specifically football, basketball?
Football, basketball is what I've seen. I have been looked across all sports, so I can't even tell you or can't lie to you. But I had some baseball. I had some players in my program that actually went and became professional baseball players. But that's not my focus. So I got that case stuff in my facility, but shit, I don't be doing that. I be back to baseball training and all that.
And I was going to ask you about that.
Do you think the reclassification works because of talent, or their personal talent they get better, or because of the talent the group they move down to? That's always been my question.
Older, you know?
Both.
Both.
Their talent and then their talent pool.
All right.
Because for quarterbacks especially, and only a certain amount of them that's going to be like the Elite 11 and you're going to be the top in your class.
Right.
And then you, like, on that cusp, but you're younger than the dudes who there. Like, if you're 12, but you just turned 12, but you're going against other dudes who 12,
About to turn 13.
Yeah.
They are a whole year older than you, which gives them a much more advantage over you, maturity-wise, strength-wise, all that. That extra year that you come back, now you're a full 13, now you're a full 13, but you're still in 8th grade playing my spot, but now you can play JV at your age.
Yeah.
By the time you become 19-year-old, you're a 19-year-old freshman, it's a big difference.
Yeah. It is. I would say it's definitely situational. Like, probably situational depending upon the talent. Like you mentioned, like a kid that's on the cusp of, like, he could be really good, if you just hold him down a year.
Yeah, because what happens is this too. But I said, it's not for every kid. I would not tell every kid to to be reclassified. No, you don't need to be reclassified. He's just not going to help you whether you 19, 19, you can be 13-year-olds, so it ain't going to matter. But those kids who, you know, on that cusp, their birthday's on the first day, but they're young 11. I got my 12 seniors just won the whole Northeast region. I had some 10-year-olds on my team that was going to be 11, but they wasn't going to be 11. They are 11 until the fall. So they in the spring playing on the 12U, well, because they're 10, not to be 11. I break them. They have talent, but they're so young. They're gonna be, in their mind, they're gonna be thinking that they're able to play against those kids that they're going up with. You know, those kids are gonna be on varsity when they're 18. You know, a 14-year-old playing varsity because he used to play with people.
Right.
So in that kid's situation, it works in his favor. But for the older kids, it don't work in their favor.
That's a good point.
You should be playing with younger dudes anyway.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Well,
it works both ways.
Yeah.
It works both ways because young dudes who are good enough to play with older kids and put them with the older group, and the younger kids who play with the older group, but because you are smart and you may be in 8th grade at 12 years old, the other 8th graders at 14 years old, it hurts you. Because now their body's going to be more mature, they're going to be in 8th grade closer to their body than you are by the time you graduate high school.
Yeah.
So it hurts you because now you'll be at your peak, your physical peak, like how they are. You wondering why. Well, you actually technically too young.
Yeah.
Look up the study, Chris, that his birthday's like in May. They go to the league. May birthdays go to the league at a higher clip because they're actually going to that season they playing. Like your birthday gotta be at a certain birthday before July 1st.
Right.
So you turn 13, you can still play with the 12-year-old before July 1st. So if you're 13 in May, you're 13, but you're playing with 12-year-olds.
Wow. Some of the age stuff is crazy, man. Because I remember when I was trying to play AAU and like how confusing it was for me to try to even get on the team at that time.
And football's even because football, at least here, they go a lot by weight.
Yeah. That too. Like they try to keep people weight close to each other.
Yeah.
But Hop, man, we
don't do that no more. Around here, we may stop. That weight shit. That weight shit's over.
Really? Yeah. Well, Hop, man, we actually
everything unlimited.
we hop
It makes no sense. Yeah, because think about it. There's no study that says because you're 10 years old and weigh 150 that you're going to do any more damage to the kid who's 10 years old and 100 pounds. Because you 150, you got to catch the kid at 100 pounds.
Yeah, it sounds like Devontae Smith. Like the Eagles got to deal with that skinny receiver, bro. Yeah. But we actually only got a few more minutes, Hop. We got to log out of here soon, man. But I do want to thank you for taking the time to come on here, man. I know you mentioned you'll be in the city within the next month or so definitely want to have you live in the studio. Yes, sir. So definitely want to have you live in the studio when you get in the city. It'll be a lot more fun, man, just to have you here live in person. But
part 2.
Yeah, man. Just definitely, man. It's great to hear about you, how the program's doing, how it's continuing to grow. I know you and I will probably talk about this a little bit more later, but you know, my goal, I hope that you can, you know, have this be something national, man. Like you're doing great things.
It's actually national. I mean, you got other programs who are doing it with other names. I mean, the whole AAU for football thing, the 7-on-7 circuit is like, it's huge. And it was needed because you had high school coaches who used to try to do, because they were the only power between you and college. Now they're saying, you got these club leagues. Now, kids are getting offers off 7-on-7 and they ain't playing football. So you don't have to play football for the school. The same way how kids play AAU basketball, they don't have to play basketball for the school. So now these high school coaches they have to do right by these kids, or these other avenues to get out.
Yeah.
Didn't even know that, bro. Man.
That's good.
But again, man, thank you, Hot, bro. Shout out to CTC. I'll definitely be in touch with you, man, and try to get you in here next month. But take care, man.
All right, let us know when you're in town, dude, all right?
I'm not CB, I'll be there.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
All right, great talking to you, man. Stay safe, all right?
That's my guy, man.
All right, man. We had another great show in here.
Yeah.
Another great show in here, man. We had Greg Hopkins from Rochester, New York, and CTC. And I love it when he talked about how it's just not about sports, but he uses sports to teach them about life. And I think people who don't play sports miss that part.
Right.
They think it's all about the game portion of it.
Yeah. And I mean, like we kind of talked about before he even dialed in, you know, is a larger impact than just kind of the sports or getting the scholarship or getting to the league. Like, you know, there's opportunities for them to get jobs and build on character skills to be just outstanding citizens. So I always try to tell my friends, man, shout out to y'all. I love what y'all do. We'll definitely try to get some more of my friends on here. But kind of as my closing statement here for me is just to be selfless and open. And I know we talked about giving back to the community. Try to challenge y'all to find something that you can be a part of. It's limitless to what you can do. We all have skills, a talent, a passion, whether that's something creative, you make movies, you write scripts, like you rap, it's whatever you do. There's a need out there, there's a kid out there, like somebody has a passion in that, you know, we can bring these things together and help each other out. So be a little selfless out here, man, open yourself up and give back.
My closing statement could be a little different. I went in my archives and got my shirt out. Enough is enough. My closing statement and it was perfect timing. I didn't plan this until tonight. That Greg was on here and Chris is he's talking about. My thing is enough is enough. This senseless violence that we have in the city, man.
It's happening everywhere. Man.
Yeah, but I mean, especially we need more men got to step up and be dads. More men got to step up and disciple. More men got to step up and mentor. More men got to do what Greg's doing out there. You know, not just get these kids and have them in sports and send them home. You know, but actually teach them what it is to be a man. Teach them what it is to be a person of character, man. To respect life, to respect themselves. And I think, you know, we got to get to a point where we say enough is enough. You know, we got to get to a point where we're willing to say that, you know, and we're not going to change the world, but you can change one small section at a time by working with one kid. You know, he's talking about the number of kids he worked with, and it's great because it's a perfect example of sewing because, you know, he's working. Now you got a kid that made a 53-man roster. You know, so this kid coming off the street now can see a little further than, you know, just being signed by somebody. So I think it's important, man, that we get to a point where, you know, I always say that you shrink your circumstance to rise to the occasion. That we begin to rise, man, and we need more above average black men, man. We need more men to step up to the plate, man. I accept the challenge. You know, I accept the challenge, man.